Did you hear? This is your Johnson County Library Insider. And now, our monthly must-knows. Here's the episode's call number.
302.1 Parker, The Art of Gathering, How We Meet and Why It Matters by Priya Parker.
We present your word of the month.
Desideratum, something that is wanted or needed. A desideratum for event programming is great online, on-demand availability.
Here are numbers you should know.
2,794. In 2019, one of the last pre-COVID era years, we had 2,794 in-person programs and events reaching 91,822 patrons. If you recently clicked into the events section of our website, you've probably noticed a big change. But change is nothing to be afraid of, especially when it's for the better. And just wait until you see how much better it is. Let's jump in. If you've ever looked for books, movies, or music, you're already familiar with the search box. We've added events as a search option in its drop-down menu. That means you can look for events in the same place you look for items in our collection. And that search box is conveniently
Welcome to the Did You Hear podcast.
Your library insider.
Dave, you okay there, Dave? Kind of
Yes.
sound a little snaky today.
That's because I'm a snake. Not just a snake, Charles. I'm a serpent.
Oh, a serpent, huh?
Because it's
Well-
Halloween's.
Oh, okay. Well, I should have known. I didn't really understand the outfit you're wearing right now, but that makes more sense now.
You thought I was a mere bookworm, but I am not. I'm a slithering snake.
Good. You're good in character there. I appreciate it.
Did you know we're actually recording this right around Halloween?
I did. Yeah.
Our listeners will be partaking on this delicious morsel in November, which is more, Thanksgiving. But
Yeah.
hey, it's Halloween, so it's okay to
Halloween.
dress up like a serpent while recording a podcast.
So, Dave, what was that that we just heard?
Oh, well, so you know what? We're about to release a number of supporting learners tutorials, and it's interesting because it's not just for children, but for anyone that's kind of new to the library, and some of the basic skills that you might need to use different online library services. And so that one in particular was about our calendar. So if you go to our website, jocolibrary.org, you'll see that in the search bar there, it says search the and defaults to catalog. But there's a little caret, a little arrow pointing down. You can click that and you can see that you can choose to search the catalog, events, search the website, or search a magazine list. Someday we'll talk about why there's a magazine list there, but there's a very specific reason. But that's not today's episode, Charles. No.
That's not.
Today's
Today
episode
we're-
is
Events.
events. Now, one could go to jocolibrary.org and they might see that top ribbon of navigation and they would see events on that. And if you click that, you'll see that you have an opportunity to see a list under events and activities, and you can sort by all events, online events, e-learning, exhibitions, library on demand, contests, and then book clubs. So I'm just going to click all events. And so when you go into the calendar, you'll see that it has the look and the feel of our catalog. And so some of the things that you can do, like you would do in our catalog, is that on that left side, you've got a column of choices that you can make to narrow down your choices for your selections. So you can choose by date or location, um, what library, types of events, audiences, languages. And one of the really cool things I love about it is that if an event requires registration,
Mhm.
then you can do it right there. And they'll tell you if it's full or if it's a wait list. And the nice thing is, if you've already logged into the website, when you go to register, you don't have to re enter all your information. We just say, hey, you're registered, and we're going to send you an email confirming it.
Nice.
It
It
is
is very,
nice.
very convenient.
It is. And you know, it's pretty cool too that there each event has like a share button, so you can share that with your friends. Um, you can send a link. You can add it straight to your calendar. Um,
Mhm.
I'll be honest with you, it's pretty snazzy.
You are a very educational serpent.
I like to think so.
Okay. So that's a pretty good overview there of how our calendar works. Do you want to tell the folks what we're planning to what else we're doing this episode on events other than just say go check out our events?
Well, I think we really have to speak with somebody who really knows a lot about events, and that would be our events coordinator, Joseph Keehn.
Yep, that would be good. And then I think we can ask some of our librarians to call us about their favorite events. Everybody likes to hear from the librarians and hear their
Absolutely.
opinions, their recommendations on books, and just their reminiscing about events.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have some music, and that fits in perfectly because we like to have a number of musicians participate in our events.
Yeah. And as we're recording this, the local writers conference is coming up, so we
Yes,
should also include some local writing
absolutely. And I'll just say this and more.
and more.
Charles,
Very good.
I am a little confused though because I notice you've dressed up for this podcast for Halloween as well. But what is your costume?
Yeah, so I've actually decided this year to go as a mongoose from Ricky Tikki Tavi, my favorite book.
Oh, wait, no, wait, what now? A,
A
a
mongoose? Have you
mongoose?
yeah, have you heard of a mongoose?
I believe that a mongoose is the natural enemy of the snake.
Hmm. Well, yep. Let's get to it.
No!
So I thought a good way to start out our discussion of events at Johnson County Library today would be just to share some numbers about one of the biggest changes that has happened to the way we do events here at the library, um, and that is the transition to virtual programming. And in 2019, the library had 2,794 in-person programs and events, and
Wow.
we reached 91,822 patrons,
Oh
which
my.
is it's a lot. But did you know, Dave, that in that first year, starting in summer of 2020 when we started offering virtual programming, that we had around 807 programs
Oh my.
approximately that have from that time in 2020 into 2021 and have already reached 64,681 patrons
And I'd
through
like to
all of
take this
those
opportunity
events.
now to read through the list of all 800 plus programs. Starting with the A's. Let me hold on here.
Well,
Let me get the paper. Here's the long. I'm not going to do that. You go ahead.
no,
Please
no,
continue.
yeah. So we have so many events that we do for our public, and that transition, I think, should be a core thing we talk about in this episode of the podcast.
Absolutely. But more than the numbers, it's the people behind these events. There's so much planning and coordination. And then when the events are happening and just making sure that it's such a good experience. And one of those people that I think you have to begin with when you start to talk about events would be our Johnson County Library Program and Event Coordinator, Joseph Keehn. Joseph is with us today. Hi, Joseph. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Dave and Charles.
So before we jump into the specifics about the events and the behind the scenes, what's the behind the scenes about Joseph Keehn? How did you come to this job? What's your career trajectory?
Oh, so I started um, in the arts. Back in the day.
Yeah.
So I come from an arts background. I originally was in museum work. I worked at the Brooklyn Museum, the New Museum, the Japan Society, as well as working at the Salina Art Center, the Spencer Art Museum, the Mulvane Art Museum. So those are more regional or local ones that people around Kansas City might know a little bit more
Sure.
about. And then, so I worked in education departments and as a curator
Ah,
in those areas, and I presented a lot of public programs. So while I
I
was at
see.
this,
So I'm starting to see kind of a transition into sort of that library world and the types of things that we were offering. So you saw the job advertised for Joko Library and it seemed like a
yeah,
good
well,
fit.
actually, a former librarian here, Stuart Hines, used to work at Johnson County Library, and
Former
he
teammate of mine.
Yes, a former teammate of yours. And he saw a production that I was doing here in Kansas City back in 2012. He saw the production that I was doing out on Troost, which was called um, An Otherwise Hopeless Evening. And he told me about this job. And he's like, I think you'd be really good for this organization and help. Them with their programming endeavors that they are starting to venture out into. They have a new county librarian at the time that's uh, Mr. Sean Casserly,
Yeah,
who's still with us today.
right. And and having been with the library for a number of years now, I can tell you it was a much needed position as things were not super coordinated, but the need for programming was definitely um, calling for more organization and people want programs and places where they can get together and have these enriching experiences. So you've
Yeah,
done a great job, and so thank you.
yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. I think that's the thing that draws uh, how the library hooks staff members really is that we really want to provide access to this, to whether it's an experience or information or materials. We really want to we want to give that to people, and so if
Right.
we can remove those barriers in order to give them those experiences, we'll do
Sure.
anything it takes in order to remove them.
Yeah, so let's broadly define events. So we're talking all ages, something for everyone, a variety of topics and formats, and it begins with as young as boy, there's an infant story time, I believe,
No,
and
yeah. So we do baby time, baby story times,
toddler
all the
story
way,
times.
yeah, all the way up to this fall. We are having a series of programs that are geared towards ageism, for instance.
Yeah,
Which are available. Some of those programs will be available through Library on Demand, for instance, where people can watch them anytime that they have the ability to watch them.
So just a real narrow scope of A focus for
Yeah,
your
we
for your
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Our focus is so narrow that it's probably just providing programs to people.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
but
so I'm
we also do provide programs for dogs too. We do have Reach with Dogs.
programs for dogs. Can't
What
forget
what about
those.
cats? Cats? No, no cats. No.
So you were saying that you want to eliminate those obstacles for people, and I feel like going back to what we opened this segment on, the transition from in person to online in the era of COVID, it seems like COVID itself was becoming a barrier to people accessing our events. How did that shift happen to your position? Because it seems like a major event in the last year and year and a half, I guess.
Yeah, definitely COVID threw the world a curveball, and as it threw our library a curveball, and how do we continue to provide the services that we were doing, um, from materials handling, from giving books. How do we get the materials into people's hands, but also those programs? We knew, and there was an outcry for us to continue doing programs, and we had to pivot. COVID forced us to acknowledge that there's a whole nother world out there on called the web, for programming. And so it really forced us to not only acknowledge that those audience bases exist there and that this is a tool that people have, that many people do have access to, um, but it also provided us an opportunity to really look at what we were providing. What are the essential things that we do need to be providing to people through our events and programs?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? It seems like a lot of these tools were available, but a lot of people were kind of hesitant to latch on to it. And in a way, a lot of folks were kind of forced to try something new and get out of their comfort zone. And then they experienced it and they realized this is a pretty rich and wonderful experience too. And it's not as scary, as far as the technology as they might have thought.
Yeah, technology can be really intimidating. And I think that's where um, technology has this element of perfectionism to it that in person, you feel like you can there's a little bit more grace given to each other, I feel, in
Hmm.
person, that we weren't giving ourselves in the virtual. I think that we're giving ourselves more of that grace in the virtual than we did
Very good.
before.
Yeah. That's well said, and I think it's really interesting when you start comparing the two because there's obviously a lot of benefits to being in person and having that contact and that immediacy, but there's a lot of positives for online platforms as well. For instance, you can put a lot of information right at the fingertips of the person that's participating in an event and give them um, more immediate ways to interact with the program.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of the online or the virtual platforms that we do utilize, um, that they are interconnected in a lot of ways. So um, someone could get as much or as little information as they want, where with an in-person program, you're limited whatever is available in that space.
Right.
Where on a virtual program, if something comes to mind, like, oh, you need to, here are some resources that relate to this particular story time, or
Right.
here are some
Right.
resources that relate to this author visit. Um, there's an immediacy there. And
Right, like in a live setting, you're like, oh, we'll send out the email later, or we'll give you a link to
mhm,
this website, and then you forget. And but in that live setting, it can be a transfer of information just very quickly. Um,
right, exactly.
The other benefit I've really noticed for myself is that because of that on-demand feature that online
right,
content unlocks, if you aren't available during a program, it might have previously been, oh, well, I missed that person that I wanted to go hear, but now people can go to our on demand on our website and they can pull things up and they can see it whenever it's convenient to them.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Charles, I was just going to mention that it's like with live programming, I think there was always that want and desire to film the live program and then later put it on the web, but that takes time and energy and a lot of coordination and a lot of, a lot of times you just don't have the ability to do that. But this online platform is built for that, and now we do have that wonderful, on demand resource.
yeah, the infrastructure is now in place, or a major part of the infrastructure that we did not have before is available for more staff to utilize. Before it was really Dave, it's your like your area of expertise, and you're one person, or myself, and I'm one person. And as Charles mentioned before, we do almost 3,000 programs in person.
Oh my.
That's a lot of content that is given out to the public, and the support structure, the support staff that's available to those. Um, COVID's really shown us what support we are needing in order
Yeah.
to keep that as to create the sustainability in programming that we would like to see in the future.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not just on 24 for our online presence. I think that's a wonderful platform
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
really
we have
diverse and got a lot of
YouTube.
resource. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've got YouTube.
YouTube.
I was going to mention Facebook. That has always been an option to us, but I feel like librarians were kind of slow to gravitate to it, and then maybe it's that intimidation factor. Um, but I think COVID forced some hands, and then they realized, oh, this is not only easy, it's super fun, and I'm connecting with my audience in new and exciting ways.
Well, and I think that COVID allowed us the time to see that too.
Yeah.
Because prior to COVID, we were going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next. It was very much, we didn't have the space in order to really reflect on, um, we could reflect on maybe the larger programs, but on those kind of the day-to-day type of programming that we were doing, we weren't able to, because there was such a high demand. There's a high demand for those, in particular, like story time. There's a high demand for those. So um, COVID allowed us to s- sit with it. How can we use this? What can our best practices be for a platform such as Facebook? Because all of those things we didn't have in place before COVID. How do you manage a chat? How do you control the space that is so flexible and malleable? How do you rein that in order for a librarian or a staff member who is facilitating or giving content the agency to be able to say, hold on a second, to a patron, I will get to you, and here's that information. So we didn't allow that space to actually develop that. COVID allowed us to do that.
What a
Yeah,
silver lining.
yeah, and then not to dwell completely on online stuff for this events, we do plan to still incorporate, once we are in a position to allow that, we still plan to incorporate in-person events again in the future, right?
Oh, most definitely. I think I this is what I do know. I do know that, and I don't know. I feel like that what I've learned so much in this job over the years, and that's one thing that I do love about the library. That is a learning organization. That your job is never completely stagnant. You will always learn something from it, or you'll learn from other people within the organization. And one thing that I've learned is that I've learned more audiences that we can reach. Um,
Ah,
so there are many more audiences that we can reach, whether that's through virtual outreach, whether that's through virtual programming, or in-person programming, in-person outreach. There's a lot of opportunities for us. So I don't foresee any of our offerings being limited now to a particular platform or a particular way of engaging it, that we have a lot more tools at our fingertips. Now it's curating it down to the what is the best method for delivery.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. Considering some of the work we're doing in the promotion world and marketing world and web world, um, we were really looking at ways that we could connect to what we call occasionals, and those are folks that just occasionally step foot in the library, but honestly, they would prefer to have an online experience over going to the physical library. And boy, stepping up our game with, um, you know, our online events, that has definitely given them that option.
Yeah, and one thing that I have seen since offering programs online where they are recorded and they are available to watch later on, um, our patron base are expecting that now. So they might register for a program and might not attend the actual live version of that program, but they are coming back to watch it. So, which has allowed us to pivot some of our programs into being recorded programs prior to it, so that the quality can be enhanced by practicing more. Um, just kind of like how, like podcasts, for instance, that you have an editing level that you can possibly do within the podcast, um, or
Wait,
Edit?
does
wait,
that
wait.
What?
Charles?
editing?
This is
What?
new to me.
I'm gonna have to
We
look
can
that one
edit
up.
this?
Maybe not this podcast.
Had I known.
Maybe, but that layer of quality control
Sure.
can be enhanced more, which
Yeah.
is something that you don't get in a live program. That a live
Uh-huh.
program, you get all those weird pauses or awkward silences sometimes, that you don't necessarily know how to fill. But if you are recording the program in advance, such as some of our makerspace programs and our artist insight programs, those programs are recorded in advance, which allows some rehearsal time.
Ah, I see.
So
Yeah.
then, Joseph, you, your role, I know from the events that I have helped out with here at the library in my position as an information specialist, you're in all of those planning meetings, in all of those prep meetings. Do you find now any difference in, like, okay, people are starting to understand more of how we do these things, or is it still a lot of hands-on guidance from you?
Well, well, for me, I think I don't do a lot of the planning of a lot of the programs. I think that um, there are so many. We have 70, what is it, 78 staff members that are
Hmm.
involved in programming at some level. There is no way that I would be able to attend all the planning sessions or anything like that. What I feel my role is here at the library is really to make sure that I am um, providing the resources and the skills necessary for those programs to occur, or to remove barriers that staff might have in order to pull off the event that they, or the program that they're really that they're trying to do or facilitate or moderate. Um, so I feel like that's my role. So I like to give, I like to kind of stand back a little bit away from the planning aspect of it, unless the staff needs me there. Um,
How
I
many years have you been here now, Joseph?
so since okay, I think I'll be going on 10 years.
10 years.
I know, a
Okay.
decade, crazy.
So you've seen a lot of change then.
Yeah.
You know where we're at right now. Just give us a little glimpse of the future of events at Johnson County Library.
Well, I definitely see on the horizon that we will be offering more programs that are going to be hybrid, where people will have the opportunity to either see them in person, or that they'll be recorded so that they're online. So I definitely
Ah,
see that that's going to be um, a potential in the future. Um, For our large-scale programs and our events, I do foresee and I hope that we can still continue offering some kind of online component to those, such as the Writers Conference, for instance. We have that's coming up. That's coming up quickly next week. We have the Writers Conference, um, and the last 2 years it's been completely virtual, and we are missing the in-person interactions, and the community building that does occur by having things in person. I think we are missing some of that, especially within um, like a writing community, for instance, could really benefit from having in-person programming. With that said, though, many of the lectures that we do offer, um, they reach that. It doesn't matter where you're at, you can get that information, and you should be able to get that information. You shouldn't have to only get it in person.
Yeah. It's like it's part of the the collection.
Yes,
That's
I
awesome.
like that. I like that. We're providing like a mini collection. I like to think of our offerings kind of like Netflix. It's you get to choose what you want to watch, um,
Yeah.
and it's not always there. It's always being refreshed. So you do have to continually come back to visit, because uh, it's not always going to be there. We do try to keep our material as fresh and relevant as we can.
Joseph, on behalf of Charles and I, thank you so much for talking with us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Christopher Leech. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator for Johnson County Library. My favorite memory from a JCL event is from the Big Fall Kids Book Sale in 2019, which was held at Central Library and sponsored and presented by the Friends of Johnson County Library. I remember distinctly a little girl with a new book, and she was so excited. She got to hold it because it was her own personal book, and she sat down immediately and started leafing through the pages and looking at the pictures. I'm not sure she could read yet or not, but she was engaging with the book in a way that just sparks joy in the heart of anybody who works in the library, because her world was complete in that moment. She was absorbed and engaged and content, and you can't ask anything more for a child to be, especially with a book in hand. I hope we have many more such memories created in our library through the years, and I hope you all find this memory as special as I do. Bye.
Hi, my name is Heather, and I am an adult information specialist at the Oak Park Library. And one of my favorite memories from a JCL event happened when I was a patron before becoming an employee with JCL. I attended the Money Monday sessions. They're called Money Mondays now, and I think they were called that back then. In the early 2010s, they were held at Central Resource Library, and I went each week, and they talked about different money topics, but my favorite part was one of the last weeks they were doing raffle prizes, and there was a really beautiful briefcase portfolio. It consisted of a 3-ring binder, and there were folders in there, and it had a little calculator inside. And I really, the minute I saw it, I just thought, wow, it would be great if I won that. Well, we all wound up putting our names in a little basket for the prize at the end, and I did win, which was just such a highlight of the event. I still have it with me at home. It's just very much stuck with me. It's a really memorable event, very happy, and that's probably one of my favorite memories from a JCL event. Thank you so much for letting me share. Bye.
Hi. So this is so weird. This is Dave Carson. You just heard me as being the host of the show. But I have a favorite memory from an event, and I have to share it. And so, I went to the Massimino, Mike Massimino. He's an astronaut, and he came to the Johnson County Library, and he presented. And what I loved about it was a chance for my dad and I to really connect and get together and attend a Johnson County Library event together that, we had a shared interest. And that was a lot of fun. And really, it's the only event at the library that we've gotten together for. And so that on its own is really special. And I just really felt like I wanted to share that.
This is Erica Vole, youth librarian at Blue Valley Library. My favorite memory of a JCL event was the Beatles sing-along that was at Central several years ago with several JCL members, staff members, playing music, and we all sang along to the Beatles with the kids. It was a fantastic time watching our young daughter sing and dance to the Beatles, and we had a great time. There was a bubble machine. It was so fun.
Hi, this is Kate Mcnair. I'm the Teen Services Coordinator, and my favorite memory from a JCL event is probably from one of our elementary receptions. I have a lot of favorite memories from those receptions where we release a new issue of our teen literary magazine. But one that I remember most recently was for issue 17. We had this amazing poem called Spaghetti Boyfriend submitted by Emma Anderson. And it was this great poem and this photo that went with it, and our editors really loved it. And then at the reception, when they got to meet Emma for the first time, there was just this really great, this outpouring of love for the poem that she had, and that was published in a magazine, and people were just so obsessed. And it was really cool to see someone come to this event for the first time, and they already have a fan base, and our editors are already all over them and super excited to meet them. And then, of course, Emma had to become an editor for the next issue, which I think is just a really beautiful kind of circle that Elementia creates. And we have so many experiences like that. I remember being at our Central Resource Library, and there was a piece of art from a previous issue that our editors really loved, and the artist showed up, and they were all freaking out about it. And so I just love those moments where people can find that they have unexpected fans. And so I think that's a really beautiful thing.
A couple of years ago, Monticello Library partnered with a rescue group, Positive Tales, and we did an adoption event at the library. Guys, I can't explain this. It was the best day. We had puppies in the library. Oh, I was so happy. The pictures of that day and the staff holding the puppies are just amazing.
Hi, Dave. This is Angelica calling from the Makerspace, and I was calling in to let you know my favorite memory that the JCL programs had held. And one in particular was the teen drop-in program where Makerspace facilitators took the equipment out into the teen area. We engaged the teens by creating an interactive large coloring wall. We brought in an illustrator who showed teens how to draw Halloween-themed cartoons, and the illustrator's illustrations were actually the ones that were printed in large formats to create the coloring wall. It was this great, fun, interactive community thing that was happening here at the library and with the teens.
Hey, Dave. This is Lisa Allen, and I'm calling in with a favorite memory from a Johnson County Library event. My favorite memory of a Johnson County Library event is from my very first experience with the Writers' Conference. It was 2016, and I didn't even work for the library, but as a patron, I reached out to Helen Hokinson via email about an anthology that I had been published in, and Helen interviewed me for what was then the local writer's blog. Through that, she learned that I wrote dating profiles for a living, which prompted her to ask me to teach a session about writing professional profiles at the upcoming Writers' Conference. I was super excited and thought nothing could be better than being asked to be a presenter. Jason Reynolds was supposed to be the headliner that year, But that's also the year that Jason Reynolds kind of became the big deal that he is now, and he had to postpone his programs with us. So when I checked the library's website for links to the conference and saw a notice that said canceled, I emailed Helen in a panic, thinking the entire event was canceled. But then she told me an even better thing than getting to be a presenter, that the conference was still happening and that Abigail Thomas was taking Jason's place. Well, as my kid would say, I totally fangirled. I sometimes wonder what Helen thought because I kept saying things like, oh my God, and she's my favorite writer, and I cannot believe Abigail Thomas is coming to Kansas. To this day, I feel so incredibly lucky that Helen and Joseph trusted me enough to pick Abby up from the airport, take her to lunch, and get her to the kickoff event that night, where she and I sat in a Carmack room in front of attendees and talked about her books and cooking and life. It was magical. Then she did a session the next morning about writing prompts. I'll never forget it. She read Marie Howe's poem Practicing, which took my breath away, and then said, now write 2 pages about something you had to practice. And that's how we learned how the phenomenally talented writer Abigail Thomas gets unstuck if she can't write. She tells herself to write 2 pages that include 3 random things, like write 2 pages with a hard-boiled egg, soggy tennis shoes, and a man named Mike. She told us how writing about these seemingly random things is actually a side door into subjects that we might be having a hard time entering because of their importance or their complexity. She is a remarkable teacher. She stayed engaged with attendees and other presenters throughout the conference when she wasn't teaching. She sat in the audience while the contest winners read their pieces, and she clapped and cheered for them. She was so kind and so encouraging and so genuine, and I still cannot believe that I actually got to spend time with her, all thanks to Helen and Joseph and the Writers' Conference.
Hey, it's Dave again, and as you very well know, this episode we're talking about events, and one of the biggest events at the Johnson County Library is our annual Writers' Conference. We are thrilled and privileged to have one of the presenters from the Writers' Conference, who also was your Imagine Your Story Writing Contest winner for 2020, Nick Lopez. And here he is, reading his essay, I Am a Coconut.
Hi, my name is Nick Lopez. This is my personal essay, I Am a Coconut. I learned what race was at 12 years old in 1999. That summer, my family moved from a quiet neighborhood in Stevens City, Virginia, to a Green Valley, Missouri, an 89.7% white suburb of Kansas City, with a population of 14,526. This is not a story about the Mexicans escaping the barrio. We were a middle-class family who lived comfortably. My sister and I attended Rosedale Academy in Virginia, a private Baptist school, with a white majority student body and administration. The move was an opportunity for our family to grow and our parents to provide a better life for us. Green Valley is where I first heard the words dirty Mexican and beaner. I discovered roofers more likely were Mexicans or beaners. Until now, I did not know I was biracial. My dad, Roger Lopez, born in Denver, Colorado, was a third-generation Mexican-American with Native American and Spanish ancestry. My mom, Rena Lopez, is from northern Pennsylvania. Her maiden name is Brunner, and her family is originally from England, Germany, and Sweden. While applying for their marriage license, the court clerk commented on the oddness of a Brunner marrying a Lopez. Luckily, this clerk was not a matchmaker for the marriage licenses she processed. By freshman year, I decided the best way to assimilate here was to be whiter than the white kids. My dad explained to me real Mexicans would call us coconuts, brown on the outside, white on the inside. But the Hollister and Abercrombie clothes I wore and having only white friends could not change my skin from brown to white. My peers still would call me a dirty Mexican, beaner, or roofer as a joke. I feared not fitting in, so I would laugh along with them, suppress the pain and confusion of who I was inside of me. When asked what race I was, my response became, I'm a coconut, brown on the outside, white on the inside. Not understanding by insulting my own insecurities, I was by proxy saying racism was okay.
To read the rest of I Am a Coconut by Nick Lopez, you can check our show notes. We have the link right there for you. Or you can go to the Johnson County Library website, jocolibrary.org, and simply search Nick Lopez.
We end today's show with another installment of In Search of Paul Rudd.
Well, friends, the search goes on. Paul Rudd may be elusive, but you know what? I have stick-to-itiveness, and that means a lot in this world. And I'll tell you what, I think I have a major break in the case. So a little bird told me that Mr. Paul Rudd is starring in a movie that is coming out very soon called Ghostbusters Afterlife. And so I'm calling out to those cast members, who are also Did You Hear listeners, to go ahead and, let Mr. Paul Rudd know that we're looking for him. We would love to have you, Paul Rudd, on our podcast. So those of you that, are the cast members of Ghostbusters Afterlife, like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, McKenna Grace, Annie Potts, listen, I know you listen to the show. I know you know Paul Rudd. Let's put one and one together and make two. And make library podcast history. Did You Hear is a production of Johnson County Library in Johnson County, Kansas, USA. Find new episodes each month on our website, jocolibrary.org, and older episodes at jocolibrary.org/didyouhear. You can subscribe to the Did You Hear podcast from our streaming home, jocolibrary.podbean.com, or search for Joco Library or Did You Hear at your favorite podcast streaming service. Also, find us on Facebook at facebook.com/JocoLibrary, on Twitter at JocoLibrary, on Instagram, instagram.com/JocoLibrary, and check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/JocoLibrary. We'd love to hear from you via email. Write to us at didyouhear@jocolibrary.org. Hear a brand new episode on the 1st of next month. Thanks for listening.